welcome to the deep dive. Um, if you're listening to this right now, whether you're a founder building a scalable business or an investor deploying capital into the African tech ecosystem.
Or honestly, just someone who wants to understand where the digital economy is actually heading.
Yeah, exactly. You already know the ground is shifting beneath your feet. So today, our mission is to make sense of a massive, comprehensive document that just dropped. It's called the Boardroom Notes 2026, published by the Growth Boardroom of AO2 Law.
It is an incredibly detailed roadmap. And before we really get into the weeds of these regulations, I think it's helpful to understand what the Growth Boardroom actually is, because it really frames everything we're about to discuss today.
Right, because it's not just a standard legal service.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's a specialized practice created by AO2 Law. What they've recognized is that for scalable startups, the traditional model of legal services, where you usually only call a lawyer when you're already in trouble.
You were getting sued or audited.
Yeah, exactly. That model is completely obsolete. The Growth Boardroom is designed to transform legal support into a proactive, value-creating engine. They integrate corporate law, taxation, data security, and dispute resolution right into the foundation of the business.
So founders can actually focus their energy on building instead of putting out legal fires.
Precisely.
Which is exactly what you need when the rules of the game are changing this fast. Okay, let's unpack this, because looking at the opening of this document, 2025 was clearly a watershed moment for the ecosystem. It feels like the training wheels completely came off.
That is the perfect way to describe it. We saw a continuation of digital growth, but more importantly, a massive expansion in the sheer scale of investment. And with that comes the intense regulatory attention that inevitably follows.
Right, the government starts paying attention when the big check's clear.
Yeah, exactly. And what's crucial to note right at the top is the dichotomy of the landscape. On one hand, physical infrastructure like uneven power supply and energy shortfalls that still poses a very real day-to-day friction for businesses.
Yeah, that physical reality still lags behind.
It does. But on the other hand, digital adoption is absolutely exploding. And that intersection, that space between rapid technological innovation and rising legal oversight, is the most critical arena for founders to understand today.
Well, let's talk about that explosion, because the numbers the document lays out are just staggering. In 2025, African tech startups raised $3.5 billion.
Which is a 59% jump from the previous year.
Right, a massive jump. And Nigeria is leading the entire charge. The report specifically highlights leaguers. According to the Deal Room Global Tech Environment Index 2025, leaguers emerged as the world's fastest expanding tech environment.
Surpassing established global hubs.
Yeah, it actually beat out places like Istanbul and Pune. Just to put that into perspective for you, since 2017, the leaguers ecosystem has grown its value by an estimated 11.6 times.
It's a phenomenal trajectory, and it's driven by renowned unicorns that really paved the way. Companies like Interswitch, Flutterwave, Jumia, OPay, MoneyPoint.
The heavy hitters.
Right. But what the Boardroom Notes emphasize is that it's no longer just fintech carrying the ecosystem. We are seeing highly diversified innovation spreading across edtech, health tech, and clean energy solutions.
And it seems like the systemic nationwide infrastructure is finally starting to catch up to that private investment too. Nigeria's broadband penetration officially crossed the 50% mark for the first time in 2025.
Which is a huge milestone.
Yeah, it really is. Plus, you have these massive structured startup hunts led by NIDA, that's the National Information Technology Development Agency. They're scouting across all 6 geopolitical zones leading up to GITEX Nigeria 2025. The sheer momentum is undeniable.
It is undeniable, but we have to look closely at the mechanics of that $3.5 billion. What's fascinating here is where that money is actually landing and what kind of scrutiny it brings with it.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, the data in the report reveals a pretty stark reality. Out of 98 Nigerian startups that received disclosed investments totaling over $440 million, 83% of that funding went to just 11 scale-ready firms.
Wait, 83% of the capital went to just 11 companies out of 98?
Yes.
Why is it so incredibly concentrated?
It comes down to global macroeconomic factors. Investors are facing tighter global liquidity and a much higher degree of risk aversion right now. They are no longer spraying capital and praying for a return.
The days of easy money are over.
Exactly. They are choosing highly structured, scale-ready business models. But here is the critical takeaway for you as a listener. As that highly concentrated institutional money pours in the regulatory spotlight, follows it immediately.
Because there's more at stake.
Right. You cannot attract a $20 million Series B check without ironclad provable compliance. Institutional investors will simply walk away during due diligence if your legal foundation is shaky.
So if you want to be one of those 11 companies taking the lion's share of the funding, you need way more than just a good product.
You need a bulletproof corporate structure. This is why integrating with an initiative like the Growth Boardroom is a fundamental necessity, not a luxury. The time of flying under the radar or winging it with downloaded legal templates is completely over.
That sets up perfectly what the document refers to as the collision point. We're seeing this rapid technological capability colliding head-on with rising complex regulatory demands. And fintech is ground zero for this.
It really is.
The report details the proposed Nigerian Fintech Regulatory Commission bill that's currently advancing. Its goal is to create a unified oversight body to streamline licensing and boost consumer protection. Because right now, if you're building a fintech, the oversight is just an absolute alphabet soup.
Depending on what your fintech does, you might be answering to the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Securities and Exchange Commission, NIDA, the Data Protection Commission, or the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission.
Sometimes, all at once. That sounds like a nightmare for a founder who just wants to launch a payment gateway. How is the industry even responding to this unified bill?
Operators are currently quite divided on it. Some believe a single commission will finally provide the clarity they need. Others worry it's just going to add another layer of bureaucracy.
Yeah, more red tape.
Exactly. There are persistent everyday challenges around licensing delays, unclear regulatory guidance, and uneven enforcement. Fintech firms are even pushing for a national fintech committee just to secure a seat at the table.
To improve the policy dialogue before new rules are drafted.
Right. They want a voice in the room.
But the collision point goes way beyond fintech. The Boardroom Notes run through an entire sandbox of emerging technologies that are suddenly finding themselves under the regulatory microscope. Let's look at AI, for example.
That's a huge one.
Yeah, there's a proposed AI bill in Nigeria that wouldn't just require broad documentation. It would actually mandate ethical transparency and require local approval for foreign AI systems deployed within the country.
Which is a massive shift in sovereignty. And alongside AI, you have quantum computing and blockchain. The Securities and Exchange Commission is actively developing regulatory frameworks for quantum risk modeling, fraud detection, and tokenized assets.
I can understand regulating tokenized assets. I mean, crypto and digital securities are obviously financial tools. But quantum risk modeling, why is the SEC getting involved in quantum computing right now?
Because the sheer processing power of quantum computing could theoretically break traditional financial encryptions. Or it could allow a firm to model market risks so effectively that it creates a completely unfair market advantage.
Oh, wow. So the regulators are trying to front-run the technology.
Exactly. They're looking at how tokenized assets and quantum modeling can reshape capital market efficiency, and they want the guardrails built today, not tomorrow.
That makes a lot of sense. But let's pivot to the hardware and physical side of emerging tech, because the document spends significant time on extended reality XR and the Internet of Things, or IoT.
Right. XR is expanding far beyond just gaming and entertainment now. It's moving into enterprise use cases, virtual education, and remote retail.
Meanwhile, IoT is growing through smart city infrastructure and AI integration.
And this is where the physical liability becomes a massive issue. XR immersive platforms are not just tracking where you click on a screen. They are capturing highly sensitive biometric and behavioral data.
Like your eye movements, your vocal inflections, your physical reaction times.
Exactly. And with IoT, the growth of interconnected smart devices creates entirely new attack surfaces for cyber threats.
Let's make that concrete for the listener. If I'm building an IoT startup, what kind of liability are we talking about here?
Okay, imagine you develop a smart temperature sensor for logistics companies transporting critical vaccines.
Okay.
If your IoT software fails due to a cyber breach or even just a coding error and $1 million worth of medicine spoils, who is liable?
Oh, man. Is it the hardware manufacturer? The software developer?
Or the telecom provider? Or the logistics company? If you experiment with these technologies and push them to market without a robust, specialized legal framework defining those liabilities, it is essentially a death sentence for your startup.
So you can't just build the tech and hand it to a lawyer to write a terms of service agreement later?
Absolutely not. Your legal team must interface with regulators during the innovation phase. For example, the document highlights that NIDA released a draft of a national cloud policy in September 2025.
Right.
The goal is to promote cloud computing while strictly reaffirming data sovereignty, meaning certain Nigerian data must remain on Nigerian servers. You have to design your entire software architecture with that data sovereignty in mind from day one.
Speaking of keeping things local and secure, let's talk about the ultimate local requirement, paying your taxes.
Ah, yes, the taxes.
The Boardroom Notes break down the specific changes to the 2025 Tax Reform Acts, and it is a complete overhaul.
It is a total paradigm shift in how the government incentivizes business.
Let's start with the carrots, because there are some big ones here. The old Pioneer Status Incentive, which used to give eligible companies up to 5 years of corporate income tax exemption just for being in a certain sector, that has been fully repealed.
Right, it's gone.
It's been replaced by the new Economic Development Incentive. This is much more targeted. It offers a 5% annual tax credit on qualifying capital expenditure for up to 5 years.
And why that matters to you as a founder is that it shifts the benefit from a blanket sector-based tax holiday to a measurable performance-linked relief.
You have to earn it.
Exactly. You only get the credit if you are actually spending money on capital growth.
Right.
Infrastructure equipment, tangible expansion. It also requires direct presidential approval via the Investment Promotion Commission and the Finance Ministry, so the oversight is much, much tighter.
Okay, but what does this mean for the investors supplying the capital in the first place?
That is where Section 163 of the new Tax Act comes in, and it is highly favorable for the ecosystem. It provides explicit tax exemptions on gains from the disposal of assets in startups, provided those assets have been held for a minimum of 24 months.
Wait, so if an angel investor or a VC holds their equity in your startup for 2 years, their exit is entirely tax-free.
Yes. It is a deliberate mechanism to encourage patient capital. It discourages the pump-and-dump mentality and incentivizes investors to actually help build the valuation of the company over time.
That is a fantastic carrot. But the document makes it very clear that the government is also deploying some incredibly sophisticated sticks.
Yes, they are. If we connect this to the broader theme of digital transformation, Nigeria's tax authorities are aggressively upgrading their own technological capabilities. In December 2025, the Federal Inland Revenue Service, the FIRS, signed a strategic memorandum of understanding with France's Public Finance Directorate.
And what does an agreement with France have to do with a startup in Lagos?
Everything. Because the partnership is explicitly designed to modernize data-driven auditing capabilities, they are integrating AI and data analytics directly into tax compliance. Global trends show that over 70% of tax administrations are now incorporating AI.
Wait, how does an AI tax audit actually work in practice?
These machine learning models allow digital tax administrations to ingest direct API data feeds straight from a business's accounting software or payment gateways.
Direct access.
Yes. The AI can pre-fill tax returns based on that raw data. And more importantly, it uses advanced analytics to detect emerging patterns of tax evasion or misreporting in real time.
That is wild. The government is literally using machine learning to monitor your cash flow.
And they are focusing heavily on the digital economy. The reforms introduce new strict rules forcing virtual asset service providers. So this means your cryptocurrency exchanges, your digital wallet services, to file monthly returns directly with the tax authority.
Monthly returns for crypto. That is intense.
It is. Which brings us right back to the core premise of the Growth Boardroom. Tax optimization now requires a deeply integrated legal and technological strategy. You cannot rely on a spreadsheet and basic bookkeeping anymore.
Not when an algorithm's checking your math.
Exactly. When the government is utilizing AI to audit your business anomalies, attempting to wing your compliance is a guaranteed path to crippling fines. You need dedicated experts managing your legal architecture.
Let's pivot slightly to the physical backbone that makes all this digital growth and AI auditing possible. Telecommunications. The report outlines a massive, long overdue legal overhaul in this space. Regulators and stakeholders have finally admitted that the 22-year-old Nigerian Communications Act of 2003 is hopelessly out of date.
I mean, think about what mobile technology was in 2003. We were barely texting.
We were playing Snake on Nokia phones.
Right. That legislation simply wasn't built to govern 5G spectrums, AI network management, or modern cybersecurity threats at a national scale.
So the Nigerian Communications Commission, the NCC, announced plans to amend the act to include adaptive licensing models, formal innovation hubs, and regulatory sandboxes for new telco tech.
Long overdue.
Yeah, and we are already seeing the practical effects of modernization. The NCC recently granted 7-year satellite permits to global broadband providers, including Amazon's Project Kuiper, operating under their commercial satellite communications rules.
But we should really ask, why is the NCC suddenly scrambling to update a 22-year-old act now? What triggered this urgency?
The document points to a drop in foreign money right.
Yes. The Boardroom Notes highlight that foreign direct investment in the telecom sector fell precipitously in the first half of 2025. That sudden drop in capital was a massive wake-up call. It forced the NCC to quickly implement strict corporate governance frameworks to improve operator transparency and risk management.
Because investors hate uncertainty. If the rules are archaic, the money goes elsewhere.
Precisely. It proves a fundamental point. Clear, modern legal frameworks and absolute regulatory independence are what actually drive investor trust.
Which is why industry groups are pushing so hard for independence.
Yes. This is why industry representatives like Alan, the Association of Licensed Telecommunications Operators of Nigeria, have been aggressively urging legislative strengthening of the NCC's independence. They know that political interference or outdated laws will freeze the sustainable capital flows required to build out 5G and fiber networks.
Investors need to know the rules of the game aren't going to change overnight based on a political whim or overlapping state laws. Now, speaking of the rules of the game, here is where it gets really interesting for anyone handling user information. Let's talk about the rule of law regarding personal data.
This is critical.
In March 2025, the Nigeria Data Protection Commission issued the General Application and Implementation Directive. They call it the Guide.
The Guide is arguably one of the most consequential pieces of regulation for digital businesses right now. It officially took effect on September 19, 2025, completely replacing the previous data protection regulation of 2019. It marks a severe maturation of Nigeria's data security field.
If you are listening to this and your startup is still relying on a copy-pasted privacy policy from 5 years ago, you need to pay very close attention to this next part. Because reading through what the guide actually requires, it sounds incredibly intense.
It is entirely transformative. The era of operating on broad, vague privacy principles is dead. Under the guide, organizations are now legally required to have mapped processing activities.
Okay, what does mapped processing actually look like for a startup's day-to-day operations?
It means you need a literal documented diagram of where every single piece of user data goes from the second it hits your server.
Wow.
If a user clicks accept on your app, you must map exactly which cloud server stores their email, which third-party marketing software accesses it, and who internally has clearance to view it.
That is a massive operational shift.
It doesn't stop there. You must conduct formal data protection impact assessments, or DPIAs, before launching new features. There are extremely strict rules detailing the lawful basis for processing data, mandatory windows for reporting data breaches, and heavy restrictions on cross-border data transfers.
So I have to assess the privacy impact systematically before I even push an app update.
Yes. And the document is crystal clear about the 2026 regulatory roadmap regarding the guide. The Commission spent 2025 on awareness and professionalization. 2026 is the year of punitive enforcement.
They're bringing out the fines.
Compliance checks will be systematic, they will be visible, and they will be accompanied by severe penalty regimes for erring organizations.
Which brings us right back to the concept of compliance by design. You cannot tack data mapping and DPIAs onto a product after it's already built.
You cannot. Legal experts must build this architecture directly into the product's code and operational flow. This is exactly the kind of boardroom-level management that AO2 law provides. They integrate the compliance architecture so the startup doesn't get shut down or fined out of existence by a guide audit.
Compliance by design. It applies just as much to the final big topic in the document, intellectual property and dispute resolution. With AI currently generating code, marketing copy, and digital art IP is basically the Wild West right now.
It is a central regulatory arena. The document notes some great proactive steps like WIPO Nigeria's Project 1%, which aims to reach 1% of Africa's school-aged population by 2030 with foundational IP education.
That's incredible.
Yeah, they are also running programs like WIPO IP Labs 2.0 to help startups integrate their intellectual property into their actual financial valuation and fundraising strategies.
Because an algorithm you wrote is a financial asset. But with AI-generated creativity, who actually owns the asset?
That is the exact recalibration we are seeing. Policymakers are actively refining the legal standards for human authorship and trying to formalize revenue-sharing mechanisms for the data used to train these AI models.
And when disagreements inevitably happen over who owns that AI-generated code or over a breached smart contract, even the arguing is going digital.
Mm.
The boardroom notes outline how dispute resolution is fundamentally changing.
Yes. The Chartered Institute of Arbitrators in Nigeria teamed up with a digital infrastructure provider to support their 2025 conference with a complete digital backbone.
We are talking about hybrid participation, live evidence streaming, and secure cloud collaboration tools built specifically for institutional alternative dispute resolution, or ADR.
Right. And to back this up legally, the Attorney General of the Federation announced a national ADR policy framework to harmonize these standards across Nigeria.
And this digital shift is legally validated by the updated Arbitration and Mediation Act of 2023, which recognizes electronic communication for arbitration, virtual mediation, and electronically signed settlement agreements.
This is a vital point for any scalable business leader listening. Modern commercial disputes today do not happen in a vacuum. They traverse multiple technology sectors simultaneously. A single dispute might involve cloud computing sovereignty, cross-border data breaches under the guide and ownership of tokenized assets.
Next, if your lawyer is still operating entirely on paper and doesn't understand how a blockchain ledger works, you are at a massive disadvantage.
Exactly. Your legal representation must be as technologically fluent as your startup. If your counsel does not intuitively understand the underlying technology, they cannot effectively mediate or arbitrate the dispute in a digital environment.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've covered massive ground today unpacking the Growth Boardroom document. If we pull back and look at the big picture, 2025 completely rewrote the rulebook.
It really did.
Whether we are looking at the 5% economic development incentive, the local approval mandates in the proposed AI bill, the intense data mapping required by the guide, or the digitization of intellectual property, disputes, the takeaway is crystal clear. Legal support is no longer an afterthought.
It is the foundation of scale. For a scalable business heading into 2026, having dedicated legal architects to interface with regulators is the ultimate competitive advantage. It transforms regulation from a barrier into a protective moat around your business.
You have to get ahead of it.
I highly encourage everyone listening to explore AO2 Law and the Growth Boardroom Initiative. Understanding how to proactively integrate this level of strategic legal management is exactly what separates the 11 startups that secure 83% of the capital from the dozens of others that get left behind in due diligence.
Absolutely. Don't be the founder who gets caught completely off guard by an automated AI tax audit or hit with a guide enforcement penalty because you didn't map your data.
And as we close, this raises an important question, something for you to consider long after we wrap up today. We discussed how regulators like the FIRS are increasingly deploying AI to monitor compliance and enforce tax codes.
Right.
How long will it be before a startup's own AI legal assistant is directly negotiating and resolving compliance audits in real time with a government AI?
Oh, man.
And when two algorithms fundamentally disagree on the nuanced interpretation of a tax law, who exactly is held liable?
Wow. Now, that is a thought to keep you up at night. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the Boardroom Notes 2026. Keep innovating, stay compliant, and we will catch you on the next one.